Hey, what's up guys? Brian from Zombie Guitar here. Here in this video I want to give you a complete understanding of the CAGED system. So I know there's other videos that I've done that talk about the CAGED system, chord tone targeting, triads, arpeggios. It's all kind of the same thing. The end goal is ultimately the same. There's also a lot of other videos on YouTube that do a good job of explaining parts of the CAGED system, but I have yet to see one video that has every single thing that someone needs to know to fully understand the system and all of the stuff you can do with it. That's the goal of this video. So in this video, this is going to be all the theory and stuff like that. It's really going to require practice to get really good at applying the CAGED system to your soloing or to your rhythm playing, whatever genre of music you happen to be playing. You're going to have to put the practice in. You're going to have to put the time in. That's why I made my site, Zombie Guitar. I have tons of these things. They're called video backing tracks that give you a ton of rhythm progressions to solo over. And in these videos, they have fretboard diagrams on the screen, and the chord tones are lighting up for you as the chords are changing. So that allows you to not only learn how to solo in key, but also know exactly which notes are part of the underlying chords as the chords are changing, no matter where you happen to be on the fretboard. So those are called video backing tracks. I have thousands of them on my site, Zombie Guitar. If you want to check that out, links to that are below. Let's get started. Okay, so the idea behind this CAGED system is that there's exactly 5 shapes, and each of these shapes is movable, and no matter what major chord or minor chord that you happen to be playing, anywhere on the entire neck of the guitar, you can always play the major or minor chord that you're attempting to play in one of these 5 shapes. So the 5 shapes are the C shape, the A shape, the G shape, the E shape, and the D shape. So this is the C major chord in the C shape. This is the A major chord in the A shape. This is the G major chord in the G shape. This is the E major chord in the E shape. This is the D major chord in the D shape. So you probably already know those chords. It's nothing new. The thing to keep in mind here is that every one of those chord shapes is a combination of fretted notes and open strings. All right, so for the C major chord in the C shape, we did this. This note is fretted. This note's fretted. This is an open string. This is fretted note. This is an open string. So that's the C major chord in the C shape. So you can imagine that, there's an imaginary bar going on here out beyond the nut. So if I wanted to instead play the C major chord using those fingers, I could take my first finger, pretend I'm barring there, and I could play the C major chord just like that. So here's the C major chord. It's a little tricky to do, but the purpose of that is to show you that I can take this shape and I can slide it up to any other fret I want to. So if that's the C major chord, let's say I want to play the C sharp major chord. So C sharp is 1 higher than C. So I just have to take this whole shape here, even though it's a little tricky to play, and just slide it up by 1 fret. So now my first finger is actually going to be doing something. So this is a C sharp chord now. If I want to slide it up 1 more fret, 1 higher than C sharp is going to be D. So if I want to play a D chord, I would just slide this shape up. Now I'm playing a D chord in this shape. So that's just kind of moving the C shape. All of the 5 shapes can be moved in the same manner. If I want to take this A chord, instead of playing it like this, I can imagine I have a bar here, and then I can take these 3 fingers and do that. I'm still playing the same chord. So if I wanted to move that up, instead of playing A chord, let's say I want to play an A sharp chord. I just move this whole shape up. Now my first finger actually is doing something, and this is an A sharp chord. If I want to move it up 1/2 step again, I would be playing a B chord. Alright, that's the A shape, but I'm playing other chords other than the A. So all of these chords, the C, the A, the G, the E, and the D, they're all movable in that manner. So when people take capos, that's pretty much all they're doing. They're eliminating the need for this whole first finger business. So let's say I wanted to take and play some chord progressions and have my capo or my first finger taking care of the 5th fret here. Instead of complicating it, I just take a capo and make my life a lot easier. So I do that. And then I can go ahead and I can play the C shape. I can play the A shape. I can play the G shape. I can play the E shape. I can play the D shape. I can make up chord progression. See how this is working? These are all just basic movable shapes, but you don't always have a capo on you at all times. So you can mimic these shapes by using your first finger in the place of the capo, but the CAGED system isn't really about trying to complicate your life by playing these funky chord shapes. It's really just letting you know, like, okay, I'm looking for a particular chord in this area of the guitar. What is it? Okay, it's this chord in this particular shape. It's just kind of giving you the knowledge of where the notes that you're looking for are. So that's the basic overview of the CAGED system. For the remainder of this lesson, there's going to be unique characteristics about each of these 5 shapes. And the good thing is there's only 5, so if you can memorize the characteristics for each of these 5 shapes, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So there's only 5 things. So the first thing we want to do is we want to know, where the root is located of each of these shapes. So for the C shape and the A shape, your root is going to be located on the A string, no matter what major chord you happen to be playing. If you're playing any major chord in the C shape or in the A shape, your root is always going to be located on the A string. If you're playing a major chord in the E shape or the G shape, your root is going to be located on the low E string. If you're playing a major chord in the D shape, your root is going to be located on the D string. So if you can remember that, it's going to make the upcoming parts a lot easier. So let's just go ahead and look at each of these 5 shapes. So you have your C major chord in the C shape. So that looks like this. The C major chord, that's one of the 2 that has its root on the A string. So the lowest pitched note of the C major chord, which is a 5-string chord, is found right here on the A string, and this falls underneath my 3rd finger. If I was to play it in the movable manner like we were, I would be switching my fingers around like so, and then the root would reside underneath of my pinky. All right, so for the C shape, the root is always found on the A string, like so. If I'm playing the A shape, that looks like this. Let's just pretend I have that imaginary first finger down there. So the root is always going to be found, in this case, it's an open A string. So it's going to be found on the A string. My first finger is playing the open A string, hypothetically, okay? So that's the A major chord. So then you have the 2 chords that their roots are found on the low E string. So you have the E chord and the G chord. We'll start with the G chord, C, A, G. So G, let's play this G chord in this shape, pretending I have my first finger barring the open strings. So my root is going to be found here of the low E string. In this case, it happens to be the 3rd fret. All right, so the lowest pitch note of this shape is found on the low E string. In this case, it's the 3rd fret. That's the note G. Then you have your E shape. Again, we'll play it like this. My lowest pitched note is found on the low E string of this chord shape. It's the open E string in this example, so this is the note E. All right, and then I have my D shape. So we'll play the D shape like that. The lowest pitched note of this 4-string chord is the found on the D string. So in this case, the note D is my root. So if you were able to understand what I was trying to get at in part 2, then this part 3, is going to be very easy. So if you know your notes on the low E string, the A string, and the D string, you can always find the nearest available CAGED shape, just so long as you know where the root is. So for example, let's just take any random note on the low E string. Let's just take the 7th fret here, that's the note B. So that's the note B. Let's say I want to make a B major chord. What available CAGED shapes do I have for the B major chord? Well, you know that 2 of the 5 CAGED shapes have their root that resides on the low E string. As we pointed out, the E shape and the G shape reside, or have their roots that reside on the low E string. So if I want to play a B major chord around this area, around the 7th fret area, with my root being located on the low E string 7th fret, I could play the B major chord in either the G shape or the E shape. So B major chord in the E shape would look like this. B major chord in the G shape would look like this. Okay, so pretty simple as long as you know which shapes have their root on which string. So let's say I want to, let's choose the 7th fret of the A string now. 7th fret of the A string right there, that's the note E. And I want to make an E major chord out of that. Well, I have 2 available shapes that can be found in this area. I have the E major chord in the C shape and the E major chord in the A shape. So let's play the E major chord in the C shape first. Or I could play the E major chord in the A shape. All right, and then the last one is the D shape. So the D shape has its root that resides on the D string. So let's just stick with the 7th fret here, the 7th fret of the D string. If you don't know it off the top of your head, you can always kind of just go back 2 frets and then up 2 strings. That's going to be the same note. All right, so that's the note A. So the A, I want to make a CAGED shape out of this A. Which CAGED shape has its root that resides on the D string? It's the D shape. So I know that my A major chord is going to be found in the D shape in this area of the fretboard. So anytime you have any note on the E or the low E, the A, or the D string, you can always find the nearest available CAGED shape simply by understanding that the E shape and the G shape have their roots residing on the E string. The C shape and the A shape have their roots residing on the A string, and the D shape has its root residing on the D string. So any major chord can quickly be found just by knowing those simple rules. The next thing to understand about the CAGED system is that the shapes always move in the same order every time. So it's always going to be C, A, G, E, D, C, A, G, E, D, C, A, and so on, depending on how many frets your guitar has. So if I'm playing a major chord in the C shape, the chord that is in this direction, the next available chord, or the next available chord shape of that same chord is going to be the A shape, and then the G shape, and then the E shape, and then the D shape, and then the C shape, and then the A shape. So it's always going to move in that same order. So let's try this with the C major chord. Let's just take the C major chord. We can even play it pretending that we have our first finger barring, even though it's not actually doing anything. It's just, we're just kind of rearranging our fingers like that. So this is the C major chord in the C shape. So C, A. So the next available chord shape for the C major chord is going to be in the A shape. So this is C in the C shape. Let's do C in the A shape. All right, we know that A is one of the 2 that has its root residing on the A string from the last part. So here's the C major chord in the A shape. All right, so C, A, the next one will be the G. So we know that the G shape has its root residing on the low E string. So A, G, we know that there's a C in the G shape somewhere nearby. So let's, look, there's our note C, 8th fret, low E string. And then we apply our G shape. So here's our C major in the G shape. Alright, so then C, A, G, E. Our next shape for this C major chord is going to be the E shape. So again, the E shape has its root residing on the low E string. So there's our note C. apply the E shape. Here's a C major in the E shape. Then C, A, G, E, D. So D is the next shape in the order. So D has its root residing on the D string. So if this is our note C here, 8th fret, low E, skip a string to the D string, move up 2 frets. There's the note C as well. Apply your D shape. So that's C major in the D shape. So C, A, G, E, D, back to C again. All right, so we know that C has its root residing on the A string. The C shape has its root residing on the A string. So let's find our next available C. Here it is. So that's C in the C shape again. And then we keep moving forward. A, so we find our note C. So here's C major in the A shape. C, A, G, and the pattern just keeps going until you run out of frets. All right, so we played C shape, A shape, G shape, E shape, D shape, C shape, A shape, G shape, and then we ran out of frets. So it's going to be like that for all of the chords. So the next thing to understand is that each of these shapes are just basic major chords. Basic major chords consist of just 3 notes. They're not 7th chords, they're not extended chords, they're not anything fancy, they're just basic major chords. And a major chord, otherwise known as a major triad, it just consists of 3 notes. So every major chord consists of 3 notes. So even though some of these shapes, actually all of the shapes, span more than just 3 strings, some of those notes are repeated. So take the C major chord in the C shape, for example. That's a 5-string chord. So you have 5 strings that make up this chord. The C major chord, the C major triad, contains the notes C, E, and G. So you have C, you have E, you have G, you have C, and you have E. So it's still just 3 notes, but some of them are repeating. And then you can do the same thing for any of the other shapes. If you want to look at the notes of the A major chord or the A major triad, those 3 notes are A, C sharp, and E. So you have the note A here, you have the note E here, you have the note A here, you have the note C sharp here, you have the note E here. So it's still just 3 notes, but spanning more than just 3 strings. So you could take that same concept and you can apply it to any major chord anytime you're playing one of these CAGED shapes. Just understand that you're still only playing 3 notes. So if I happen to play, I don't know, let's say I want to play an F major chord in the C shape. First of all, I need to know that the C shape has its root residing on the A string. I also want to know that for the C shape, I'm going to use my pinky to place it on the root. So find my note F with my pinky on the A string. It's going to be right there. 8th fret, I apply my C shape. So that's the F major chord in the C shape. So that's only 3 notes. There's just the F major triad consists of the notes F, A, and C. So all of these notes that are being played right now are F's, A's, and C's. This is an F, this is an A, this is a C, this is an F, this is an A. And that's going to be true for any of the CAGED shapes that I want to play the F major chord in. So just keep that in mind. No matter what shape you're playing, no matter what major chord you're playing, as long as you're just playing a major chord, it's only 3 notes. So having an understanding of the previous part that each of these shapes is just 3 notes is definitely going to help you in manipulating these chord shapes to make other chords. The most common manipulation you're going to want to do is to make minor chords. So if you know that a major chord consists of 3 notes, and those 3 notes are a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth, I'm not really going to get into intervals and why that's the case. I'll link you to some lessons if you want to get more into that, learn more about that below. But just understand that a major chord is a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth. A minor chord is a root, a minor third, and a perfect fifth. The only difference between a major chord and a minor chord is that third interval, and it's only a 1 fret difference. So if you're playing any of these shapes anywhere on the neck of the guitar, the C, the A, the G, the E, or the D shape, and you know what chord you're playing, and you also know which note or notes within the shape is the third, then you can easily make that into a minor chord by simply just lowering that one note by one fret or one half step. So let's just let's go with C, for example, and we're just going to go through all the shapes of the C major chord and all the different CAGED shapes. So here's your C major chord like this in the open position, C major in the C shape. So anytime you're in the C shape, you have your root, you have your third. So anytime you have a C shape, you know that your third is going to be found on the D string. So root, third, fifth, root, and then third. So anytime you're playing a C shape, two of the notes are going to be the third. So this may get a little confusing, but remember, there's only 5 shapes. So if you can remember these rules for each of the 5 shapes, it's only 5 shapes. So let's do root, and then take that third, and we'll lower it by a half step. Instead of a major third, it's a minor third. So root, minor third, fifth, root, and you can't really lower the high E string anymore, but you can still play instead of the major version, you're playing the minor version. So that one's a little tricky right there because we're dealing with the open position. But let's move up to the next shape. So C, the next shape would be the A shape. So let's play the C major chord in the A shape. So you know when you're playing the A shape, your root resides on the A string. So here's your C major chord in the A shape. So there's a C major chord in the A shape. And as long as you know where your third is located within the A shape, then you can always lower that by one half step to make it a minor version. So when you're playing the A shape, your root is here, here's your fifth, here's your root, here's your third, here's your fifth. So anytime you're playing in the A shape, you have a third that is found on the B string. So if we know that this is our third, we can lower that by one half step to make it a C minor chord. Pretty easy. It's a pretty easy shape to do. So C, A, the next shape would be G. We know that the G shape has its root residing on the low E string. So we find our note C, because that's our root of this chord, on the low E string. Here it is, close by just as expected, because that's the next shape in order. So we apply our G shape to the C major chord. This is a tricky one to do. But again, we're just going to kind of figure out where the roots, thirds, and fifths are. So you have your root, you have your third, you have your fifth, you have your root, you have your third, and you have your fifth, and then you have your root. So we're only really concerned about the thirds for now. So this is our root. In the G shape, we know that our third is found on the A string, and our third is also found on the B string. So we can go and we can manipulate that chord. You're not going to be able to play this one. It's not physically possible to play a full 6-string version of a minor chord using the shape, but this is still giving you the location of the chord tones of the G minor chord. So let's just arpeggiate this G minor chord. So G major first. So every time I have a third, I'm just going to lower it by one half step and arpeggiate a G minor chord now. Okay, now it has that minor arpeggio sound. All I did was lower the third by one half step, and that's that. So that's the G shape. So C, A, G, E is next. So if that's our note C, we now want to find our C in the E shape. The E shape has its root residing on the low E string. So here's the C major chord in the E shape. So let's find our third here. When you're playing the E shape, you only have one of the notes as a third. So you have a root, you have a fifth, you have a root, you have a third, you have a fifth, and you have a root. So our third is found right here on the G string. So lower that by one half step. So that's now a C minor chord. So we did C, A, G, E. One more to go. We have the D shape. D shape has its root residing on the D string. So I find my note C on the D string. If I know the 8th fret is the note C, I can come up to the D string and then up 2 frets. There's also the note C. Apply my D shape. Figure out which one of those is the 3rd. So here's your root, here's your 5th, here's your root, here's your 3rd. So anytime you're playing a D shape, your 3rd is going to be found on the high E string. Lower that by 1/2 step. So here's a C minor chord. So that's all there is to it, to making a major chord into a minor chord. Whatever shape you happen to be playing, just be aware of where the 3rd is within that shape and lower that 3rd by 1/2 step, and the result is a minor chord. All right, so now taking what you learned from the previous sections, knowing that the E shape and the G shape have their roots residing on the low E string, the C shape and the A shape have their roots residing on the A string, and then the D shape has its root residing on the D string. And then you could take any of those shapes, and as long as you know where the 3rd interval is within the shape, you lower that interval by 1/2 step, and it takes a major chord and converts it into a minor chord. Knowing that, you can now play chord progressions anywhere on the entire neck of the guitar. So more often than not, a chord progression is going to be, all of the chords are going to be part of a key. Sometimes you're going to have some out of key chords here and there, but most of the time everything's going to be more or less in key. And let's just, for the sake of this lesson, assume that is the case. You can always use your circle of fifths to let you know what the in-key chords are for any key. So the circle of fifths groups the diatonic chords, the 3 major chords, and the 3 minor chords like so. This grouping of 6 happens to be the key of C major / A minor. C major, A minor, relative major minor pair. It's the same key signature. The 3 diatonic major chords would be C major, G major, F major. The 3 diatonic minor chords in this key signature would be A minor, E minor, D minor. So if I wanted to play a chord progression that's in the key of either C major or A minor, consisting of any of those 6 chords, I could do that. I could play that here, I could play that here, 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 here. It doesn't matter, because no matter where on the fretboard I happen to find myself, I'm always going to find C, D, E, F, G, and A somewhere. So let's just take, this area right here, this 5th to 8th fret region, or this 4th to 8th fret region, and let's just see if we can find all 6 of those diatonic chords in this area. So, the 1 chord for this key signature would be the C major chord. So you first have to find your note C. Well, within this area, you have a C here on the 8th fret of the low E string. So you know that, anything that's on the low E string is either going to be in the G shape or the E shape. So the one that would stick within this area would be the G shape. So C major would be found in the G shape here. All right, and then the 2 chord would be the D minor chord. So I know that there's going to be a note D somewhere around here. Here we go. Here's the note D on the 5th fret of the A string. So the available shapes that have its roots residing on the A string are the A shape or the C shape. So for this example, we're going to do the D chord in the A shape, because that will keep us in this little position here. So this is not a major chord, but it's a minor chord. So I have to know where my 3rd is and lower that by 1/2 step. So here's my D minor chord here. And then the E would be your 3 chord. So let's find the note E. Here's your note E right here on the 7th fret. So again, the root is on the A string. So I'm either going to have the A shape or the C shape. So if I wanted to play an E major chord in the C shape, it would look like this. But of course I have to make that a minor chord, because that's the diatonic chord. It's E minor. So you just know where the 3rds are. Or I could play it in the A shape. So here's an E major chord in the A shape. But I have to lower that 3rd to make it a minor chord. So here's the E minor chord in the A shape. And then my 4 chord is going to be F. So I know there's an F around here somewhere. So here's an F right here, 8th fret. It's on the A string. So it's either going to be the C shape or the A shape. So we're going to go with the C shape here to keep us in this position. So here's the F major in this position. Then the 5 chord is going to be G major. So I have a G right here, 5th fret of the D string. When my root is on the D string, I know that's the D shape, so we're going to play the G major in the D shape. Alright, and then the 6th chord would be the A, so it's A minor. So I have an A here on the 5th fret of the low E string. I also have an A here on the 7th fret of the D string. So if I wanted to play an A major chord, it would look like this. But I have to take that 3rd and lower it by 1/2 step to make it a minor. So there's my A minor chord. I could also play the A in the D shape, because there's my note A, root on the D string. So you know you have your D shape available there. So here's A major in the D shape. But of course you have to know where your 3rd is and lower that by 1/2 step to make it a minor. So, all right, so that kind of takes you out of that position a little bit, but that's just showing you, there's the A minor chord and those two shapes available. So what we did there was we took the 6 diatonic chords that we were looking for, and instead of playing them in the open position, we played them on a different spot of the neck. The spot that we chose just happened to be, this 4th fret to 8th fret region. And, first we just figured out where our root notes were for each of the 6 chords that we were trying to create. We were looking for a C chord, a D chord, an E, an F, a G, and an A. So we found our C, our D, our E, our F, our G, and our A notes. And then we looked at which string each of those notes was on, either the E string, the A string, or the D string. And then we just applied the appropriate CAGED shape, depending on which string the root was on. And if it was a minor chord, we had to make that one further manipulation by taking the 3rd interval of the shape and then, lowering that by 1/2 step to make it into a minor chord, which we talked about previously. So we just did that right there, but you can do that anywhere on the entire neck of the guitar, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next step. All right, so when it comes to visualizing the fretboard, there is 5 go-to positions, and those are known as the 5 pentatonic positions. So coincidentally, there are also 5 CAGED shapes. 5 pentatonic positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you have the 5 different CAGED shapes, the C, A, G, E, and D shapes. So each of those pentatonic positions will line up with one of the CAGED shapes for the 1 chord of the key that you're working in. So what I mean by that is, we're looking at the key of C major / A minor. For that particular key signature, we've figured out the 6 diatonic chords that we're looking for, the 3 major and 3 minor chords that we're looking for. The 1 chord of that key signature is the C major chord. So, in pentatonic position number 1, you're going to have a C major chord in a shape. In pentatonic position number 2, you're going to have a C major chord in a shape. Pentatonic position 3, you're going to have a C major chord in a shape. So anytime you're in position number 1, it's going to line up with the G shape. So here's pentatonic position number 1 for the key of C major. Start and end on the note C. You're probably more familiar with thinking of this as the A minor pentatonic, which it is also if you start and end on the note A. But we're looking at it in terms of the major perspective. So this is C major pentatonic position number 1 also. And then that lines up with the C major chord in the G shape. All right, and then, so we know where our 1 chord is. You know that a 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, and 6 chord are going to be nearby. So here's our note C. We found our note D, our note E, our note F, our note G, and our note A. And all of those notes are on either the E, A, or D string, so we were able to build CAGED shapes from any of those roots. We can then move up to position number 2, pentatonic position number 2, which is this. So that's pentatonic position number 2. We know that the next CAGED shape for the C chord would be the E shape, because we just played the G shape. So C, A, G, E. So here's C major in the E shape. And then here's pentatonic position 2. And then we know that we can find all our other chords nearby. If you have a C nearby, well, you know there's a D nearby. Here's D, here's E, here's F, here's G, and then here's A. So, you know, all those notes are found on either the E, A, or D strings, so you can build the CAGED shapes accordingly. So then you jump up here to pentatonic position number 3. So here's pentatonic position 3. Alright, so that's pentatonic 3. So which CAGED shape would fit there for the 1 chord? Well, we played C major in the G shape here, and then we played C major in the E shape here. So the next in line, C, A, G, E, D. So you're gonna find your C major in the D shape here. So let's find our note C. Here's our note C, 10th fret of the D string. Anytime you have your root residing on the D string, you know it's going to be in the D shape. So here's C major in the D shape. And that lines up perfectly with pentatonic position 3. So, you know, there's our note C. You know there's going to be D, E, F, G, A, and we're not really worrying about the B for now. We're just worrying about the first 6 notes because those are the 3 major and 3 minor chord. So if that's our note C, so here's a C here, here's D, here's E, here's F, here's G, here's A, and we're not really worried about the note B. So we found our notes in this area. And those are all on the E, A, and D strings. Therefore, you can build the CAGED shapes that you need. So that's pentatonic position 3. Then you move up to pentatonic position 4. All right, so which CAGED shape would be there? Well, you could either go in C, A, G, E, D. C is the next one. Or you could just kind of recognize that your note C is right here on the 15th fret of the A string. Anytime you have your root on the A string, you know it's going to be in the C shape. So this is C major chord, the 1 chord of this key in the C shape. So it's C major in the C shape, lines up with pentatonic position 4. And then you can find your note D, find your note E, find your note F, find your note G, find your note A. All right there. And then we just have one more pentatonic position to go. And that's pentatonic position number 5. All right, so we just played the C shape. So we're going to play C major chord in the A shape. So here's the C major chord in the A shape. And then we have our note D, our note E, our note F, our note G. G is also here. And then our note A. All rooted on either the E, A, or D strings, so we know we can make CAGED shapes out of them. And then you're back up to pentatonic position number 1, which we already did down here, so we don't have to repeat that. Hopefully that was making sense. So 5 pentatonic positions, 5 CAGED shapes for the 1 chord. Once you can find your 1 chord, you know that your 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 chords are going to be also available in that same area. And you just kind of make your CAGED shapes based on where the root is, E string, A string, or D string. It's really beneficial to know for each of the 5 shapes specifically which note is which. So what's the root, what's the third, and what is the fifth, because you can manipulate any of these chords as long as you know some basic chord theory. And I'll post a link to that kind of stuff below. Basic things like, so we know that if you have a major chord and you lower the third by 1/2 step, it becomes a minor chord. Some other theory that you might want to know, if you have a major chord and you know where your root is located, 1 whole step below the root would be what is known as the dominant 7. So if you can fit that note into your chord, then you have a dominant 7 chord. I made another lesson about 10 different ways to come up with dominant 7 chords using these CAGED shapes. Or you can, let's say you know that an augmented chord consists of a root, a major third, and then a sharp 5. So as long as you know where the 5th is in any of these chord shapes, you can always raise the 5th by 1/2 step, resulting in an augmented chord. So what I'm trying to get at here is within each of these 5 shapes, you want to kind of know what intervals are which. So I'll just quickly go over that, and you can do with that what you will. I'll just give you a couple examples. So the color coding that I'm going to use is the red dots are going to indicate the roots, the yellow dots are going to indicate the thirds, and the black dots are going to indicate the fifths. So every time you have a C shape, no matter where you happen to be at, your root is always going to be found on the A string, your third is always going to be found on the D string, your fifth is always going to be found on the G string, then your root is going to be found on the B string, and then the third is going to be found on the high E string. So the C shape is a 5-string chord, and that's where your roots and thirds and fifths are for that particular shape. The next shape would be the A shape. The A shape is also a 5-string chord. So anytime you're playing A shape, your root is found on the A string, your fifth is found on the D string, your root is found on the G string, your third is found on the B string, and then your fifth is found on the high E string. When you have a G shape, that's a 6-string chord. Your root is found on the low E string, your third is found on the A string, your fifth is found on the D string, your root is found on the G string, your third is found on the B string. Your fifth is also found on the B string if you play a G chord like this. And then your root is also found on the high E string. So this may be a little, it may seem a little advanced, but again, there's only 5 shapes. So if you can remember where these intervals are within each of these 5 shapes, then you can just make adjustments as necessary to come up with other kinds of chords. All right, so we did the C chord, we did the A chord, we did the G chord, the E chord, or the E shape. So the E shape is another 6-string chord shape, and your root is found on the low E string, fifth on the A string, root on the D string, third on the G string, fifth on the B string, and then root on the high E string. And there's one more shape, and that is the D shape. The D shape is a 4-string chord shape. Root is found on the D string, fifth is found on the G string, root is found on the B string, and then third is found on the high E string. So that's the 5 different, that's the 5 different shapes and where the roots, thirds, and fifths are found. So just knowing that, let's just do a couple examples. Let's say I want to make some 7th chords. So let's start off with, let's play an E major chord here. So we're playing an E major chord in the A shape. So I know my root's here, I know my fifth is here, I know my root is here, I know my third is here, and I know my fifth is here. So if I want to make that into a 7th chord, I have to somehow figure out a way to get a note that is 1 whole step lower than the root into this chord. So I know my root's here on the 9th fret of the G string. I'm just going to lower that by 1 whole step, and then I'm going to keep everything else the same. So now I have a E dominant 7 chord. That's pretty easy. Let's try another shape. Let's try, we'll stick with the E chord, and we'll do it in, let's say the E shape. So E major chord in the E shape. That's here. So I know I have my root, I know I have my fifth, my root, my third, my fifth, and my root. So 3 of these notes are roots. So I guess the easiest one would be this note here, 14th fret of the D string. That would be a root. I could lower that by 1 whole step to get that dominant 7th note in there. And I could easily turn that E major chord into an E dominant 7 chord. Alright, so let's just do one more. Let's say I want to take an E major chord and turn it into an E augmented chord. I would first have to know that my chord formula for an augmented chord is a root, a major third, and then a sharp fifth. So instead of just being a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth, I know that I have to take my fifth and raise it by 1/2 step. Therefore, I need to know where my fifth is. So I have my root of this E major chord here. I have my fifth. I have my root. I have my third. I have my fifth. So I guess that would be the easiest one to raise. So let's say I just want to do root, third, and then this sharp 5. Now I just played an E augmented chord just because I knew where the 5th was in that particular shape, and I raised it by 1/2 step. So I'm not going to go too into chord theory here, but the thing is, know where your intervals are within each of these shapes. Know that a slight manipulation of any of these intervals will make another chord. Knowing a little bit about chord theory and how to make these other chords, such as dominant 7th chords or augmented chords or diminished chords or whatever, can pretty easily be achieved once you know these intervals. All right, so that's going to conclude this lesson here. So I tried to be as concise as possible and cover everything about CAGED as possible in this one lesson. But, if you really want to dive into the subject more, I have all types of other lessons that heavily focus on chord tone targeting, taking other approaches other than the CAGED approach. Ultimately, the goal is the same. You want to know how to play in key up and down the entire neck of the guitar, and you want to know how to, always know which chord is being played over, whether you're the rhythm guitar player or the lead guitar player, and you want to be able to do so no matter where at on the neck you are. So CAGED is just one common approach to doing that, but there's other approaches. I talk about all types of different approaches on my website. I have tons of video backing tracks that allow you to practice this stuff, having the chord tones light up on the screen as the chords are changing, so you can kind of noodle around in the scale and kind of know how to target the chord tones and things like that. So if you're really interested in this subject, take a look at my site, zombieguitar.com. So that's going to do it for this lesson. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.